Hey folks, this is Phoebe with Shrub Step Blooms. I came out to turn the water on for the field before work and thought maybe this wonderful gloomy day would be a good day to film my end of August field tour. So here we are. I'm going to try to be slightly more strategic than last time, but we'll see how that goes. And focus mostly on this half of the field just because that's where the majority of what is still blooming is growing. But we'll pop over to the other side too, just to take a peek at a few things. But first, we're up at the top of the fourth row of beds, and this is full of status that still looks pretty good. Some of it is fading out. You can tell which colors I've been picking because they are the ones that are pushing new growth. So a lot of white, almost none of that yellow that I was complaining about before. A lot of the pink and blue I've been picking as well. And then this is the color that I've actually been wanting to get for yellow because it's light and kind of cream colored with a yellow center. So there's like one plant. So I don't know who this is or where it came from, but I might try to save seeds off of it if it can produce seeds before the fall comes. Which, speaking of fall, it's feeling very fall-like, hence the looming clouds. But we've been getting a few good rain showers, and we got the biggest thunder and lightning storm I've experienced living here, which was pretty exciting, but a little rough for anybody recreating in the backcountry during that time. But we've been getting rain, which has been really nice, but mixed blessing, right? So I'm used to not having to worry about any fungal issues too much, just because we have high airflow and not a lot of moisture. But we're starting to see some mildew and stuff pop up, but that's pretty typical for the end of the season. Over here are the Strawflowers, which are pretty much done for now. I picked them pretty low on the stem in hopes that they'll push up some new flowers, so we'll see if we get there by the end of September. This is my Rudbeckia that I really need to whack back, but I don't honestly think I'm gonna get there, and even if I do, it's not gonna probably bloom that much more, so I think I'll probably more than likely just leave these all for the birds to eat. That beautiful basket flower is pretty much done. There's a few nice looking flowers on it still, and I did show what the seeds look like in a previous video, but I think it's time for me to come back through again because it's been a few weeks and a lot more of these seed heads have matured, and I could definitely collect a whole lot more seeds. So you can see these little nuggets here, and I'm just gonna chuck them in there and see what happens. Down at this end is ageratum. There's some cupid's dart in here, which I'm not really loving it. It's cute and delicate, but I haven't really used it at all, and it's not a big statement flower by any means, but it was a test to see if I would like it, and so far I'm not, I like it, but I don't think I would plant a whole lot more of it. We've got ageratum down here. I haven't picked a ton of this because I need to do a little more research on the right time to pick it, because no matter the stage of the central parts of it seem to wilt when I pick it. So I've been trying to pick it when it's more like this, but even so, these outer pieces will wilt. But by the time these are stable enough to not wilt, this is going to seed, like the central part. So I just need to do a little more research because it is a really lovely flower, and maybe I just need to be actually putting something in the water to hydrate it better. I don't know. I haven't been using any sort of hydrating solution or any feed in the water because my turnaround time is so quick. I don't think it's really necessary. But maybe this is one where I need to fiddle with that because it is a really lovely blue. It's coming through a little more purple, I think, because of the lighting, but it's a really nice pop of blue to have in there. Down here's my patch of lime green nicotiana that I barely picked at all. I could grow like 5 plants next year and have plenty. Here's my first batch of cosmos. Again, barely picked any of it, so I'm really appreciating my choice to only plant a few. And somebody pointed out these cupped ones. are the cupcakes series, which makes a whole lot of sense. I just haven't grown a ton of them. We got a nice little lacewing in there too. I haven't grown a ton of the cupcakes series, so I've never seen one that was fully cupped, but it's pretty cool, and I'm glad somebody set me straight, so that's pretty neat to see. So this is cupcake, the white strain, and then I do have the blush strain back here too, but it's a lot more frilly, so it's not as obvious that these petals aren't distinguished around the base. But they are quite pretty. They're one of the few that I thought was maybe worthwhile trying to keep growing. There's just so many cosmos varieties, though. It's wild. Once you get into the flower world, it's wild, all the different varieties you have to somehow choose from. But that's that. We've got my patch of Gomphrena that looks great. I haven't been picking it because I don't really like it. I know some people really love it. I do like this species that the Strawberry Fields variety comes from because it's a lot more firm. It's a lot easier for me to tell when I can pick it and it won't wilt. This other species, this one's nice and firmed up, but they are also smaller. So this, I'll just pop that off, compared to something of a similar age. Maybe these, I guess maybe they're not a lot smaller, but it seems like these, the ones in the Strawberry Fields species size up more quickly, and they make more of an impact when you pick them. So that is where I'm at with Gomphrena. I think I'm only gonna pursue getting seeds of this species in the future because these colors are lovely, they're beautiful, but there's not any point to grow them if you're not gonna pick them. And then my zinnia row is looking a lot less full than it was last time it took a wander down it. I've been trying to deadhead to get more growth. So there are some on here that still look pretty nice, like that one. But we're also getting kind of wind battered from the storms, and then I've started to see just a little bit of mildew starting to show up, which is pretty typical with zinnias. But I'm hoping I'll get one more pick out of them since we have about a month. The dog has decided to join us out here. That's nice of her. So there's one that obviously I missed deadheading. So in this row behind me, which it had the Gomphrena and all, this is just a bunch of different salvias. I have a similar issue with this. This is like either blue better or Victoria blue salvia. I have a similar issue to the ageratum where I can't figure out the stage to pick it. I've picked it at every stage I can, from really soft and green to pretty woody, and it always wilts. So again, needing to do some more research on the treatment of it, because it's a really lovely blue color. It would be great to have to use, but if it's something that just I can't figure out, then I'm not going to keep trying to grow a bunch of it. This is my starflower that's completely gone to seed, so we could pop it off and save seed for next year, so maybe I should do that. We'll see. And it's getting completely choked by weeds like clover and bindweed. Similar story with my scabiosa. Sorry, this is a lot of things I don't really want to grow again. Scabiosa were kind of on my list already of things that I wasn't quite sold on. They just go to seed so fast, and then you have to keep up on deadheading them, and I just don't have quite the time, I think, for that. They're beautiful, and they are nice, so I'll keep growing a few, but I think this is about as big of a patch as I'm going to grow, just because while they're lovely for a couple weeks, they seem to go to this stage incredibly quickly. So I don't think I'm going to expand that space. A couple weeks ago, maybe I showed you that I transplanted some Rudbeckia, and here they are. This is the section that has water on, you can probably tell. And underneath it, there's a bunch of salvia coming up, which is what was here before. So hopefully the Rudbeckia will grow fast enough. And this stuff, these little seedlings, I don't think they're winter hardy, so they'll die out in the winter anyway. So I'm not terribly concerned about it getting overrun, but it's nice to see that those are doing well. Down here, where we're headed, this section right here is I guess I'm going to call them ornamental sunflowers, ones that I'm growing for cuts. All of those big ones down there are giant types that I was using for seeds for the birds. And then there's sweet corn and drying beans and that kind of stuff in here. So this patch is one of my better patches of sunflowers this year. It's still getting attacked by bugs. So I think for me, growing these pale centered varieties might just not be in the cards. I'll use up whatever seed I have left, but I don't know that I'll buy more because it's really obvious the damage. Whereas on the darker ones, I don't see, this is a little past, but I don't know if there is any damage in there, but it's a lot harder to tell if there is a little bit of imperfections. Like this one, there's this kind of seam right here, you can see it. But when it was in full bloom, it probably wasn't terribly obvious. So probably not gonna do a lot of light-centered sunflowers anymore. Unfortunately, they're super beautiful, but every single one of them, it seems like, has some level of damage. Below that row, this is a row entirely of aster and celosia, and then we've got marigolds, some eucalyptus further down, some mahogany splendor, and then more cosmos mostly. So the asters are just ready to pop. I picked maybe a dozen or so this week or past weekends, but they are just on the cusp of going nuts, which is going to be beautiful. Sadly, the timing is pretty rough because I decided to take 2 weeks off in September, so I'm not going to be picking except for myself. So I think a lot of these will just end up on my table, but they'll come, and some of them should come a little bit later, so hopefully we'll get to see more over time. My little patch of marigolds is really phenomenal. Unfortunately, it also got a little bit wind battered, so it's kind of looks like it's falling open and falling apart right now, but I'm really loving this cocoa series of marigold, which is what these orange ones are here in front of us. I bought a mix which had the gold, orange, and yellow in it. And so I'm really loving that. So I think I'm going to get more of those for next year. And then I really like this one as well. It's called Mission Yellow. It's, again, I think from burpees or something like that. It's just got quite a different petal structure, and a kind of just different feel going on. So it's got these incurved petals on the outside, or these are, actually probably flowers because that's the type of plant it is. So you can see those are actually flowers, but they look like incurved petals. And then all these central flowers have a different structure than a typical marigold does. So I think it's a nice different touch to have. I've been trying to grow some paler varieties, which I think that might be Savannah Moon or something like that. And they just seem to get damaged so quickly, which is my issue with a lot of pale flowers. You look at them and then they turn brown at the tips. So still haven't found my best choice there. This is a different variety. It might be like Kilimanjaro White or something, which is throwing some interesting kinds out. And then the last section here is just Crackerjack, which I like, but it seems to, it's an older variety. It's not as heavily refined as some of the newer varieties, and it seems to shatter a little more easily. But I really like these single kind of petal looking ones, so I keep growing it because I enjoy those. There was a cool aster back here that I walked past. Ooh, there we go. This one, that one's gonna be cool. I think it's one of those pink tipped bonita shell or something like that varieties. So if we go down, there's another aster, a blue one, coming in. Yeah, and then we get down to the celosia. After the marigolds, we have some baby blue eucalyptus, which is doing quite well. It stayed, 2 inches tall for a long time, it seemed like, and then suddenly shot off once it got warm. So I think by the end of September, we'll have a good amount of cutting material. Ava is chasing what I think is a mouse because I just saw her run, but she's working hard. This is my big patch of mahogany splendor. It's doing magnificently. I will grow this just to come out and stare at it and wonder. It's just a really beautiful plant. And then this half of the row is all celosia, and this is all celosia I saved seed and grew grew from safe seed. So we've got some different crested types in here. This kind of peachy thing. I remain very enamored with this kind of whole peach tone range. And then we've got some flamingo feather style back there. A lot of kind of red spiky type ones. So that's like spicata, I guess. And then, ooh, look at this one. That's nice. It's a nice, it's too big to pick. Like the stem is doing this thing. So it's over 1 inch wide. It's, yeah, definitely over 1 inch wide. So it's not really an ergonomic pick, but it is quite lovely to look at in the garden. And then we've got these yellow crested ones, which I think I grew Kramer's lemon lime or something like that last year, which is probably where some of these came from. But more peachy ones. I really like these crested ones. The spike ones are nice. I mean, I love them all. I have 25 feet of them. You can imagine that I like them all, but yeah, I'm quite happy with this. This is absolutely the best looking celosia I've ever grown. This entire side is pretty much this kind of purpley pompous plume style one, and then there's a few crested types mixed in, and there's a few of this hot red, which is nice because I will need it in the fall. So I'm quite happy with the celosia. And then down here at the end of this other row, we've got some random Gerbera daisies because I got fixated on that for a minute. And then we have, this is probably double click white or snow or whatever that variety is called of Cosmos. There's some interesting stuff that happens with this variety. Like, again, super fat stem, lots and lots of buds at the top. I'm not sure how that one's going to turn out looking, but we'll see. And then I found, it was called Mission Orange, so I was hoping it would be the same as the Mission Yellow in petal structure, but it's really not. It does have a different structure and is interesting, but I am not as in love with it as I am the Mission Yellow marigold, but live and learn. This next section has more Cosmos because I was plugging them into little spots where I had space. This is my Sweet Annie forest that I need to make sure I cut down before it goes to seed. So right now it's in this bud stage and it's finally woody enough where it's not just immediately wilting when I pick it. So within the next couple weeks I need to cut this all down because I don't want it all over the place next year. And then we've got some Gaillardia, I think Lawrenziana, a tiny patch of Nigella that I picked a little bit off of it. I haven't picked anything off this. I think they're just this super cool flowers to look at, and the bees quite like them. So sometimes that's enough for me to leave things. And then we've got my ornamental grass patch. So we've got a couple types of millet, like a foxtail type, a proso type, and then pearl millet. This kind of section is all from saved seed, and then I bought the fancy stuff this year, the fancy grass, and it has this nice purple tone to it. Unfortunately it's all wind damage, so I end up stripping a lot of the leaves off. And then we've got it's not Frosted Explosion, it's a different one, but it looks like a grass that grows wild and kind of weedy here, so that's kind of funny to me. Maybe there'll just be volunteers of it everywhere next year. We'll find out. There's a tiny section of buplarum. There's another round of ami that's growing. There was cress back there and I overplanted it with sunflowers, so hopefully we'll get some more sunflowers. And then, let's see, back up. This is northern oatgrass or something like that. It's a perennial. It's native to the Midwest, I believe. And it makes these really cool flower structures and seeds. So that's what I'm growing them for, in the hopes that I can pick these. Probably not this year, but hopefully next year. But I started these from seed this year. So I've got a nice little patch of those going. There's more sunflowers down here that I overseeded over the top of, man, she's working hard right now. Over the top of some other kind of cooler season liking crops. So there's, let's see. I actually don't know if the moonflower likes cooler seasons. It just wasn't filling in quite. So there's a pink or rose balloon flower down here. And there's only a couple because I got them at a plant sale to see how they would do. The other thing that didn't grow was I have astrantia or something, however you say that word, in here. Some of them died, but some of them are making it, and they look a lot better now that they have an overstory and a little bit of protection. Like, they're actually reaching a pickable length, and they look quite nice. So I picked out a couple different varieties of this, and we'll see who makes it through to next year before I get my hopes up about that. And then some other things under the little sunflower forest are some phlox. So this is perennial phlox, and I tried to grow probably 4 varieties, and I think 3 made it. So I'm really loving this one. It's got pinky lavender buds. I don't remember what the name is, I'm sorry. It might be cool water, it might not be, but it's quite beautiful. I've picked maybe 2 or 3 of those. I'm mostly just letting them grow this year. This is the one that started it all. I kept seeing flower farmers recommend a variety called David. So here we are, there's David. One variety did not make it, so I planted some basil that I desperately need to thin. And then for some reason this variety didn't do as well, so we'll just probably plunk some of that one up here and down there because that one didn't come up either. Interesting. The rest of this row is Alstroemeria, which I'm really hoping would bloom this year, but it doesn't. I'm not holding out hope. And then some GM. Those I started both from seed this year. Here's my basil that's finally making it. I finally started picking on it. It makes me really happy. It's big, it's lush, it's to the stage where it's blooming, so it's woody enough at the base to pick, and it won't just immediately permanently wilt off and be sad. And then the rest of this is like 15 feet of flowers that I just grew for fun. So there's Sopoglossus, mostly like a cube blend or something like that, and then multiple different kinds of Nicotiana. So there's perfume mix and bronze queen, something like that. I don't remember if that's peace pipe or something else. There's peach screamer, which I just, with a name like that, how could you not grow it? It's also just a really cool flower. And I'll continue to grow some Nicotiana because this section, this little patch right here, is where I consistently see hummingbirds having little tiffs about who gets to hang out here. So I will continue to grow Nicotiana, at least to some degree. Maybe not quite this much in one spot, but it's definitely working. Oh, speaking of hummingbirds, let's see if we can see them. It just landed on this tip of the corn up there. There we are. I don't know if you can see that, but there's one of the hummingbirds. I've seen up to 4 at a time out here doing their little aerial displays and battles. So, not amazing on an iPhone, but you get the idea. There's definitely a hummingbird right there. That gets us to the last 2 rows in this section. So this is kind of column D. I don't know. My brain works as an Excel spreadsheet sometimes. So there's A, B, C, and D columns of beds and then numbered from there. So fun times in spreadsheets. So this last section, and I've mentioned this before, but there will be another bed there eventually, hopefully, that will have more greenery in it, and that will also act as hopefully kind of a windbreak. But right now, this is hopefully going to be entirely a Baptisia bed. Baptisia, however you say Latin names in your neck of the woods. So this first section, outside of this random lupin that I missed planting in its spot, this is all blue. So this is Baptisia indigo, one of the blue varieties. We move on to a cream variety that didn't really germinate very well, so I'm going to get more seeds. And something has been digging. Something named Ava might have run through this bed. I planted some dill in there because there's just not a lot growing and it wants to get some use out of the space, but there are a few plants that look quite nice, so not totally lost, just not a total win. Then the next section is yellow, and then I mixed in pale coneflower, which I stratified the seeds in the fridge, chucked them in the ground when I saw they were starting to sprout in the fridge. And then this is what we have a couple months later. So that was super easy. So if you're in an area where you can and want to grow coneflower, or especially where it's native, that was a super easy process. I highly recommend it, and it's really cheap. I got those seeds. I actually got pretty much all of these seeds except the blue Baptisia from Prairie Moon Nurseries. They have no idea who I am. I just have had really good success with their seeds. So this is the yellow, and then down here we have a white Baptisia. Again, not as strong germination, so I'm going to buy more seeds this year, this fall, and do some more overwintering stratification, because that worked really, really well with the blue variety. And then true to type, at the end of this row are sunflowers, because I didn't have enough Baptisia to fill the row, but hopefully with those extra seeds, we'll kind of fill this row out. And I am trying to interplant some other sort of, I guess, Midwest natives that can be used for cut flowers. So these are all outside of the dill, I guess, native to the Midwest, I believe. And there are a lot of species that do well as cut flowers, so I'm trying to expand my repertoire there. And then this bottom row, row 11 currently, is the row where the hollyhocks are eating the lavender. But the hollyhocks are beautiful, and I am so happy with them. I really thought the gophers would eat a lot more of them by now. And there is that section down there where they are a lot more sparse because something did come through and eat them. But it allowed me to plant some zinnias that are doing okay. They're coming in. I'm hoping I need to remember to pick them and deadhead them. But there's some really lovely colors in here. And next year, we're probably going to have to rip out a whole bunch of, oh, interesting, a whole bunch of hollyhocks. This is where it took them down, but there must have been enough of the root left on some of these that they came back. That's interesting. That's kind of cool. Good job, plants. And again, everywhere that there was empty space, I've just been plugging in sunflowers, because by next year or two, these probably will fill in. So this is Grosso lavender. Those are bigger, like 4-inch pots that I planted, and these were little plugs that I planted. So you can tell that they're going to get pretty big, and they're a really large variety of lavender, and they should fill in this space pretty well. I'm missing one in here somewhere. One of the double varieties did start blooming, and there's a couple more that are sending up shoots. And you can see I've been ripping the leaves off to try to let the lavender breathe. But check this out. Look at that. So continuing on, we're in column C, I guess, of the rows. And this is the row that has lavender and sedum at the base, or at the bottom row, and the scara also. And then again, always sunflowers everywhere. And then this is Echinops down under this round of sunflowers, and check it out. Somebody's blooming. So I wasn't really expecting anything out of these this year, but it looks like I'll get a few flower heads that I can pick, which is pretty exciting. So we've got lots of sedum. This that's kind of got this pink tinge right here is Autumn Joy. It's doing incredibly well. There's a reason it's so well known and so heavily planted, but we'll see if I get around to picking any of that. I kind of keep forgetting to check down here when I'm picking. And then more sunflowers over the Echinops, more Gara, more sunflowers, kind of the same. This is all Shasta daisies, which I'm getting ready to pull out the original little patch I planted, and I was hoping that these would do really better. I'm hoping that this one is just an aberration, because that doesn't sound like the description I read for this variety, which I think is Starburst or something like that. So I'm really hoping they do better next year. Otherwise, they are coming right out. And then we've got more lavender down here. The varieties in this section are Provence and Phenomenal, I believe. And then we've got blue grandma grass too, which is just blooming its little head off right now. And it's super cool looking. Over there, we have an invasive elm, and this is part of why those bottom rows haven't been planted yet, because we have all these invasive trees to get a handle on first. But these are just so cute. I don't pick them or anything. They're just kind of interplanted because grass is good. I thought it would be a nice little accent, I guess, with the lavender. And of course we've got more sunflowers coming in, and then down here it turns into coneflowers. So there's a little bit of pale coneflower, and then a lot of a variety called bravado, something like that. And then we have some spots where the quail dust bathed out all my seeds, but there's a few sunflowers that made it. So that's coming along. And then volunteer willows all over the place, which is good and bad. And then this was a kind of hodgepodge disaster area where I'm actually trying to start sedum. And in the interim, I planted some other fillers like didiscus and mignonet, this French word that I can't really say, but it's not super impressive to me. And maybe it's just my climate is not the place for it, or I'm doing it wrong. And then we've got native plants like this yellow bee plant is blooming its head off. I've mentioned before that it's a pretty stinky plant. So if you brush up against it, it smells pretty strongly, pretty pungent. And then we've got, ponderosa pine hanging out, and just these little pods of native plants that kind of are scattered along down there. The next two rows are more Echinops, Orangium, some lupin and penstemon up at the front, and then we've got delphinium, pumpkin on a stick, which is that's super exciting. It's starting to colorful. Look at that. Tiny patch of calla lilies and some other random stuff. Perennial glads, crocosmia, and liatris. So we'll kind of take a cruise down that way. This is my remaining rattlesnake master plant, and it's just getting ready to bloom. So that's an orangium, like yuccafolium, which, look at those leaves. Doesn't that look like a yucca? So I got these at like a Master Gardener's plant sale, and somebody ate that one, but this one is making it. And so this, I think is like star frost, or whatever the one that's got frost in its name. It's a white variety of Echinops. So I anticipate next year I'll just have a big old patch of them, which will be exciting. The delphinium are doing a lot better than I could have anticipated, considering how tiny they were when I planted them out. I thought they wouldn't bloom until next year, but I've gotten a few pickable stems off of this. But the pumpkin on a stick, the plants look pretty rough, but they're putting a lot of energy into making these, all these little pumpkins happen. And this is, I think, technically an eggplant. I could be wrong, but they're going to be so cool. I'm really excited. So I think the protocol is you pick them, you clean all the foliage off, and then you have these pretty cool little ornamental pumpkins on a stick. But they are still quite vicious looking, which is pretty interesting. We've got white orangium blooming here, and this one is still fairly green, so it's still pretty new. These are massive stems, so I'm hoping next year we'll get something smaller, because I've been picking them and stripping off pretty much everything below this like top central piece, just to fit them into the type of work I do. But I'm not complaining. All these tiny different wasp species really love them, so I'm quite happy with that. And then we've got my poor attacked glads, and you can see I ended up cutting down all those volunteer sunflowers because it was just getting to be too much. I was getting rashes from brushing through them all the time, and there's plenty of other sunflowers for the goldfinches to work on, so I'm not too concerned about taking that away from them, but it might be a little crunchy sounding because of it. And all these other birds can eat the seeds now they're on the ground, so that's cool. We've got crocosmia, which is doing pretty well. They bloomed, and some of them are even setting seed, that might be kind of cool looking in a bouquet, huh? I didn't pick any of the flowers because I don't think they last terribly long. This is more of a nostalgia plant for me. But maybe I could use those. That'd be kind of cool. And then we've got the liatris, which is pretty much bloomed out. But even though these aren't, at a stage where I can pick them anymore, the bees are still working hard on them. So I just leaving them standing to hang out for the bees. And then back here is my mildewy lupin. There'll be another little section of penstemons that I need to plant in here that I have up at the house and just keep forgetting to bring out here. And then those midnight masquerade penstemons still looking mighty fine, really lush, really beautiful foliage, and I've been picking the seed heads slowly but surely to use in bouquets. Next up, we've got mostly sad glads and then some dahlias down at the end, and then all dahlias. And this year is making me reassess how I want to do my dahlias because I haven't been using them that much. And I definitely have not been using the ones I grew from seed because they're mostly open-faced and they don't have a good vase life. So I think my approach for next year is going to be save the ones that I really, really want, divide those tubers, grow them out, you know, same deal, different day. And not focus so much on growing from seed, even though that's fun and you get some cool, different, like new looking varieties. I used probably 20 to 30 feet of this row doing that, and I don't think it was the best use of space because they're cool, don't get me wrong, and I do enjoy it, but I haven't been using them and I haven't been hanging out here as much as I thought I would with them. So just changing tactics year to year, but there are some lovely ones, and there are some ones that I started from seed that I do intend to save because I think they're really cool. I don't think that's one of them. No, that's a little crazy twirly petals there, but we do have some really cool ones like this. I think this is my only dinner plate type left, and it's either tapioca. I think it's tapioca maybe, but they're quite large, and that's barely open. This is a bloomed out one that's nearly the size of my face. So again, white doesn't do super great here because we tend to get a lot of wind, so something I wouldn't probably buy now knowing that, but I already had it when we moved to this spot. But there's still some cool ones coming through from other saved tubers, and there are some really lovely ones, but this is the one I was so excited about saving last year. This is the one that I tentatively named Sugar Fairy. I don't really know why, it just makes me think of like sugar, rock sugar or something. So I was a little worried that it was going to be more downward facing, but they've turned up as they matured, which is nice. And I'm going to keep it. It kind of amuses me. But yeah, that's the dahlia situation at the moment. And there are beautiful, nice ball type ones that I've been cutting a little bit for arranging, but just not enough to justify like 70 feet of flower bed. So some adjustments to come for next year, probably just one bed and cram them all in there, and that will be that, and then we'll see how that goes from there. So as we go uphill in this section, it gets a little bit weedier and a little bit messier because we get into some of the cooler season crops that I never pulled out. But this section is dry corn, so like flower corn, more big sunflowers, more beans. And then right here, we've got some coreopsis that is actually kind of rebounding, which is pretty cool. And in here was supposed to be crustpedia, and it's really trying to make it, but it just got too weedy. I didn't stay on top of it enough, so we're not getting quite as many as I'd hoped for, but there's always next year. The next little patch is calendula that I cut back, and the stuff that looks mildewy is all bindweed, and that's another reason to get rid of it for me, is because it's being a vector of disease, and I don't see it like impacting a lot of the plants, but it definitely will if I gave it time, I think. This section has turned mostly into clover, which is frustrating, and I haven't pulled out these volunteer sunflowers yet, but there is a big beautiful patch of annual phlox, but again, I don't find myself picking it, so I'm debating how much space I want to give to it next year, because it looks lovely right now, so it's hard to be like, I'm not going to grow it, but I haven't been using it, so it's just a decision I've got to make. Down here, don't remember what that was. It's all weeds now. There is Icelandic poppies in here, or there are rather, and so they've started kind of reblooming a little bit as the seasons cooled down. And here was annual poppies, and then I planted some more basil in there, but you can see the thousands of annual poppy seeds that are already coming up, so not what I'm going for. Those will overwinter, I think, and I don't want another big patch of poppies right here. These are asters that I saved seeds and grew from safe seed. And then I did these as like a winter sowing out in our tunnel instead of starting them on heat, and they've done pretty well, I would say. They started blooming earlier, so these are obviously a bit further along because they got planted out a lot earlier than I thought they could tolerate, and they're doing really well. So that's something for me to keep in mind for next year, is maybe I can start some of them in our tunnel and free up a little bit of space in the my seed starting room. This is more a me that's going to seed, so all of those little green poddy looking things are seeds. So I need to probably cut it and throw it into a dry spot so it doesn't reseed all over the place again this year. Another section where I pulled out something to plant something else, in this case sunflowers, and then some more basil I think is in there. But this is all where, this just doesn't look nice anymore. It's all like gone to seed, and there's bachelor buttons and bells of Ireland and cerinthe. And then in here is lisianthus, which I've picked through pretty well already, and we'll see what keeps coming. I think there'll be more of the later varieties coming, but there are some really lovely stems in here still. I'm just trying to prolong the season as much as possible because it takes so much effort to get them to this stage, and I'm really planning to do a better job weeding and hopefully just mulching in the first place next year so that this whole carpet of clover thing doesn't happen, because I do not want that. And then we've got larkspur that have gone to seed, and again up here is more of the same. So I turned the water off to this row, this second row down, because it has stalk still blooming. There's some quartet stalk in there, and then it had ranunculus, and then my wall of sweet peas. And then up top actually is still looking pretty good. There's this first section that has Clarkia and Godetia in it that is and has been done for a while, so really should pull it out, but I haven't gotten there. But the snapdragons are making a resurgence, so that's been nice to have some of those to pick. I did actually get around to deadheading them, and now we've got kind of the secondary bloom coming through, which is hit and miss on stem length and whether the weevils are eating the flowers or not, but or whatever it is. There's like these little grubby looking things too that seem to eat them. But I've been pretty happy with this acting as kind of a secondary crop of snapdragons. They're definitely not as big and full as they are in the spring, but for just kind of side filler pieces, I'm pretty pleased with it. But you can see definitely bug damage on some of them, so you have to be a little more careful about that this time of year. So I'm not going to do a row to row tour of these upper, 8 rows where the rest of the flowers are growing, because it's largely just messy. It's stuff that I need to weed and pull out, and over there's kind of a void where I pulled out weeds and volunteers and stuff for planting all the fall, or some of the fall planted perennials like delphinium. So there's just, I wandered through it and I thought, this is just a lot of me saying it's a mess, I'm sorry, which gardens are sometimes messy, and this time of year is nothing to be sorry about. It's the end of August, it's burnout time. There's lots of food for the animals. There's lots of shelter for the animals and creatures, and beautiful, massive helenium that's like almost 6 feet tall, which is way bigger than I realized it would ever get. And sure, there's plenty of stuff to pull out, but also when you just kind of step back and look at it, it's bright and beautiful, and sure, maybe it's a little bit brown, kind of dying back, a little bit, bedraggled and wind battered, but you know what? It's windy here. It's just what it is. So I'm trying to give myself a little more grace, and I hope you do too in your gardens, because we tend to share the things that look beautiful and perfect, and we all know that's not reality. We all know that that's not life sometimes, but we do see that there's some goldenrod that went to seed, and I never picked all of it, and I never deadheaded it, but right now, look at all these bumblebees hanging out in it. Oh, that's why it's not focusing. So this is just, I guess, a reminder to myself a little bit that everything doesn't have to be beautiful and perfect. There's always going to be more weeds to pull or more things to turn over and kind of get ready for the next season. And I'll probably do probably a shorter video about just getting ready for next year. But this is what it looks like. There's birds calling, there's like insects You know, it sounds like crickets all the time. You can see evidence of other creatures wandering through, even if they're stealing my melons. Not my favorite choice they make, but it happens. That's like not a joke. They've stolen 3 melons off of one plant, and it's making me very sad because I was so excited about them. But that's what happens when you share with all the other creatures that live around. So there's plenty of more melons. It'll be fine. I just need to get over it. But this is the garden. This is what it looks like this time of year. There's just all kinds of life happening, and some of it's, you know, dying back because it's not its time of year anymore. And that's okay. And I think we're going to end on one of these massive, beautiful Helenium plants because they're making me really happy. They're just so ridiculous and outsized compared to what I was imagining. So we'll just end looking at one of these lovely, lovely bright yellow flowers.